And we are recording. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I have Ash here, and she is so amazing. I cannot wait to share her top tips for world building in art, and I'm going to throw it over to her in just a second. But in case you have no idea who I am, my name is Kayla. I go by Kayla Creative online, and I love helping creatives figure out how to make an income from their iPads through digital art. So if that sounds cool, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you'll know when I'm doing cool videos like interviews with my friends. Okay, Ash, tell us about yourself. Tell everybody about yourself.
So I'm born and raised in Indiana. Oh, I have a visitor. Born and raised in Indiana. I am a nature-loving, fantasy-loving girl, I guess. And during the day, I'm an e-learning developer. So I create online courses for nursing and medical lab students who are in college and trying to, become future medical professionals. And at night, I am an artist, or a newly found artist, I'll say, in the past year and a half. And outside of that, I'm a dog mom.
So you hear my dog. I'm a dog mom too. I just learned so much about you. What kind of dog do you have?
So she is a Havapoodle, or we think she's a Havapoodle. I'm a co-parent to her with my mom, but she's a cutie. I actually have a little picture. This is her.
Oh, she's so cute. She's actually smiling. She's so cute.
She's fun.
And mine is, and she's being feisty, of course, the moment I start the interview, but she's Jada Pinkett, and she's a Chihuahua Bulldog mix. So I might have to continue muting myself while you talk. Ignore me, and people will absorb the goodness that is you. So I just learned a lot about you. I didn't realize that you created in the evenings after full-time work. Mm-hmm. That is amazing. So maybe next time you can share your tips for how you do that.
Oh my gosh. It's just no social life. A little bit, but.
A little bit. Okay. So what kind of art? I mean, I already know the answer to this, but for anyone new to you that's watching, what kind of art do you make? Can you describe your art to us and maybe tell us a few of your biggest inspirations in art?
So now I make digital illustrations, but I actually started out with watercolor and acrylic. And it's kind of, I'll try to make a long story short, but up until about 2 years ago, I hadn't really done art since maybe college or high school. It was just something that is like, it's a free time thing. I'm just kind of playing around with different, Pinterest trends and stuff like that. But eventually with the pandemic, a lot like you, I had the opportunity to invest in a tablet with the stimulus check thing. So from there, I kind of been messing around with digital art, and now I guess I consider myself a digital artist. So a lot of what I do now is illustrations, and specifically, I would say more cartoon-like 2D illustrations. But yeah, I don't.
So I didn't realize that you just started digital art. I'm learning so much in the pandemic. That's something major that we have in common. You are so talented. I would have thought that you'd been doing it forever.
Thank you.
So when you did, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, like, you're the same. I think a lot of people actually were in that same situation where they had time off and had the opportunity to kind of flex their creative skills.
Exactly.
And so, yeah. And I think digital art was something that I've always wanted to do, but didn't have the capability to do, because it's like you don't have materials like you would for watercolor and stuff, but your tablet or whatever you're using for digital art is expensive. So it's something that like you kind of have to build up to. But yeah,
I love it. So this is a good point in time for, I think I'm going to ask, if you're watching this, there are probably, like Ash said, more than just she and I who bought their iPad during the pandemic. I'm just curious, leave a comment and let us know if you started digital art in the pandemic or started any type of new thing. Let's have a poll in the comments. I'm just nosy.
I would love to hear that too. I think it's
Yeah,
awesome.
I'm just nosy. I want to know because it can't just be us. Okay, so can you tell us about Terra Solera? I know you've got a whole storyline. You can't share all of it, but as much as you can share about this beautiful world that you're building.
I don't know where to start. So I guess I will go back to when I started digital art.
Awesome.
So I sort of just started it as like, it's always something, a medium that I wanted to get into, but I didn't actually know what I wanted to create. And when starting out, I sort of was just like, let me do portraits and different things that I've always been doing, but it wasn't something that I was ever passionate about. It was almost like just doing art to, I guess, do it and not actually with a purpose in mind or anything, which is fine. And I think that everybody should, you know, be creative and practice their creativity. But for me, it's kind of like I needed something that would motivate me to keep making art. So eventually I just started finding little settings and being like, oh, I love these type of elements that I see in nature. Let me try to transcribe this into my art. And through doing that, I started to learn more about fantasy. And I got into a game called Dungeons and Dragons, which is a tabletop game. Yeah. And I started to learn more about like these fantasy worlds. And if you've ever heard of the author, N.K. Jemisin, she created a book called, not the elements, the fifth season. And so it's a fantasy book that revolves around a Black main character. And for me, I always related to that. And I always found that it was missing in a lot of these fantasy aspects, especially sometimes in Dungeons and Dragons and Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter and stuff like that. So for a while there, I was just like, well, gosh, like I wish I could find this in art, because you do have these wonderful artists like GDB who draw these amazing illustrations that have magic elements. But I sort of was looking for something that had a core story to it. And so after kind of talking with friends and family, it was like, well, why don't I create something like that? So it kind of started with my main character, Sky. And that's where Terra Solera sort of started to develop and take off. And
so you had the characters first before you had the world. Sky existed before her world existed.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I was just like, well, something that's important to me is representing POC and minorities in art. And I was kind of looking back at the previous pieces I had done, and I'm like, well, I'm not really seeing that reflected in my own art. Like, why am I just making this to make it? Like, why don't I actually kind of invest time to create something that tells the story of those type of characters? And so, yeah, I started with Sky, and I was like, well, she's a cool little girl. She's timid like me, and she loves books. So, like, how can I create this world that sort of revolves around her in a way, but then also, you know, something that she could explore? So I kind of started her story in Tiberia, which is a desert city. And from there, I was like, okay, well, she needs to go on an adventure. How can she get out of Tiberia? And the pieces of the world a little bit more. And I'm a little bit all over the place just because this is always a developing thing. And there's a lot of pieces to storytelling and world building that I highly underestimated. And I don't know how authors and writers do it. But yeah, so it just kind of went from there. And the more I made pieces that involved her, I was like, well, I need her to be interacting with this world and other characters and learning things, not just, you know, be a person that's in a setting of a piece and then move on to the next. So yeah. And a little bit more about Terra Solera specifically is, so I really wanted to focus on themes that come from solar punk and Afro Futurism.
Solar punk? Oh,
Yeah.
I gotta write that down. I haven't heard that yet. Okay.
It's sort of like, how do I explain it? It's sort of like cyberpunk, but it's just
Mhm.
nature everywhere, lots and lots of plants.
Oh, I
Yeah,
love this. Okay.
yeah.
I
So
learned a new thing.
I loved it, and then there's like things like there's this old show called Dinotopia, so I was like, oh, I love dinosaurs, so let me try to include that into all of this. So it was drawing from those elements, and I thought, it would be really cool to create a world where people and animals live pretty harmoniously within nature, and power sources are from the sun and the moon and bioluminescent plants and animals versus being from things that we have to make through technology. uh, and then from there it sort of like was getting into the culture of how this world worked, and what are the people like, how do they interact with each other, how I don't know, do things kind of work in nature. And so as I'm still developing this world, I guess, yeah, I I think I went a little bit off the path
No,
there.
this is beautiful. I love it because, and I'm going to have all of your contact information in the description below so that people can see this. If I'm tech savvy enough, I'll figure out how to put your artwork on the screen beside our faces, but we'll see how that goes. But I'm excited about this because I personally have never seen anything like this before. So
Really?
just like you, yeah, just like you mentioned, I had seen artwork with magical elements and fantasy elements and things like that, but they were, I mean, exactly what you said, more or less individual scenes, snapshots from a moment, which is great because then you could make up your own story.
Yeah.
Um, but the thought of a world that continues and an adventure that you can follow, and your captions on your photos are like storybook pages, I just was like, oh my god, what is this? This is just amazing. I haven't seen anything like it. So I'm so excited for people to delve into it. So I want to ask you, for the audience, to give us your 3 to 5 top tips for building worlds in our art. And once people who maybe don't know you yet go to your page and see it, they'll scramble back here because they're going to want this information. So how do we do it? Because sometimes I feel like my work is kind of static and I want to be able to make larger worlds with it. So tell us, how do we do it?
So, and I'm no expert. I'm not even like at the advanced level or anything like that. My main tip is finding resources online. I
Okay.
think one of my biggest resources, and I wrote everything down.
Okay.
There is an article online, and I'll make sure to send you all these. It's called The Introduction to World Building. So when I started thinking about how do I actually like want this world to look, that's where I started. And it's a great website that kind of breaks everything down that you would see in a great novel or in, a series like The Lord of the Rings or something. So it kind of goes over, magic systems and discovering, or I guess, exploring those, and exploring things like politics and culture and religions and all the things that you would see in our world, and as well as things like geography and the landscape. So it kind of gives you a good starting point of saying, like, this is how I want my world to look, I guess, in a
Yeah.
way, and then figuring out where to go from there.
Okay.
And I think one of the biggest tips from that is figuring out how you want to explore your world and where you want to start. So
Okay.
for me, it was Sky. And I really wanted to represent this character who, was this timid, intelligent girl who hadn't really explored outside of her town. And, she had been spending all these years reading through books and learning all these things about the world that she lived in and the history there, but never really seen it for herself. So it's kind of like, okay, let me start there and then
Perfect.
kind of go from there. Um, so yeah, that's one of my main tips, is
Okay.
basically decide where to start and look up resources. Um, and then I would say one of my biggest second tips is draw inspiration from what you care about. Um, because, like I said earlier, it's like at some points in my life, I was just making art because, like, hey, this is trending on Instagram and these people are getting likes. Let me do the same exact thing. And it wasn't something I
Yes.
personally was passionate about. And so I thought about, well, I love going to nature gardens and conservatories. How do I incorporate nature into my art?
Yeah.
And, um, you know, all these different things. I love cultural anthropology. So it was like, well, how can I figure out how to, you know, incorporate cultural aspects that I really love in this world into my world? So yeah, mainly finding inspiration for yourself and then
I
bringing it
love that.
in. Yeah.
And that's an important one because I think especially as people who, I don't know, do you exhibit any of your work in real life? Okay, so
No.
me, of course, I don't either. So it's like as people who are, when we exhibit our art, it's all online. It's so easy to compare, like, oh, what is this person doing? What's
Oh,
trending right
absolutely.
now?
Hmm.
So I love that last tip. Okay, can I recap real quick?
Yeah.
Oh, where did I cut you off?
Well, I do have one third tip, but it might be
Yes.
a follow up to another question you have.
Oh,
um,
well, throw it at us.
I guess my third tip was utilize tools.
Mm,
Because years and years ago, when I, you know, was doing art in high school and college, you didn't have all of these free online resources and,
yeah.
you know, channels like yours where you could learn so much and, um, you know, really learn like the ins and outs and tutorials of things that are so simple. And even just recently, it's like tutorial of how you studied anatomy, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this seems so simple, but like I haven't done that for so
Yeah.
long. So utilize tools. You know, there's free websites. One of my favorite ones I just found is called worldanvil.com.
Rolled anvil.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a free website, so all of the basic things are free, but basically it allows you to create your world. And then it has aspects where you can go through timelines and create like family trees for your characters or friendship trees, or, you know, even animal trees. Like if you're like trying to figure out like, how did this fish do this and all this stuff. Um, yeah, it's a great resource and I absolutely recommend people check it out.
I love that. Okay, so I'm gonna make sure that I get all that so I can put it in the video description for this. Okay, so we need to gather our resources,
Mhm.
figure out a good starting place. We need to draw inspiration. This is my favorite one. Draw inspiration from what we actually care about, especially for those of
Absolutely.
us sharing online only, because it's a
Mhm.
trap to only be doing what
It
other
is.
people are doing. That's a
It
trap.
really is.
And then utilize tools, and I'll put tools in the description of this. Oh, I love it. Do you have any other encouraging words for anyone watching, Ash? I like to just share encouragement with folks, especially people who are looking at this because they want to do some type of art journey or digital art, but they haven't started yet, because that's the boat I was in, looking at YouTube videos and afraid to start. So if you could say something to those people, what would you say?
Hmm. That's a lot. I I I think the most important piece is that if you want to do something, do it.
Yeah,
There's I mean, there's so many things that you can do. It. You don't have to jump from having no experience to being these artists that have thousands and thousands of followers online. You can just start with a pen and paper and go from there and practice your creativity, because I promise you, like if you just start to practice it, it becomes something that you actually enjoy doing. And
yeah.
then the tutorials come later and you can kind of get into all of those and be like, oh, okay. And you know, once you figure out what you actually care about and especially what you're inspired by, I think sometimes it comes naturally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. You know what? I really love that because I love what you said. The tutorials come later. The tutorials are refining it, but just start, just
Yeah.
make stuff. I love that. So I also have 2 videos on my channel for anyone who this advice applies to. I have a how to start video, which is me being woo-woo, as I often am, giving tips for artists on how to just kind of get over that yucky, icky, uncomfortable feeling of starting something new. So I have a video about that. And then I have a video called Everything You Need to Know to Start Your Digital Art Journey. So I'll link both of those in case they're helpful. Ash, where can people come find you and find Sky and Finn and all the fun stuff?
Well, I'm mostly on Instagram at ash.carrara.art. I'm setting up a DeviantArt in Facebook, but I'm just like social media. I'm good, so all of those things are going to come later. But I'm mostly on Instagram. So.
And I'll link that too. Okay, I didn't put this question down, but I have to ask: will we get a book? How much more of this story will we get? What do you have any secrets up your sleeve?
Well, I do have secrets. There's,
Okay.
you know, Sky and Finn are kind of chilling on their little adventure right now, but some magical aspects are about to come up, and especially exploring more of what this world really looks like. I don't have a book in mind. I wouldn't even know where to start there, but I think that it's kind of one of those things where it'd be really cool to do something like a children's book or even just to start a coloring book. So maybe one day.
One day. Well, y'all, before those yummy aspects come out, hurry up and go to her page so you'll be caught up. Thank you so much, Ash. This means the world to me. I love getting to actually see people that I'm huge fans of. So I appreciate you doing this for my little YouTube channel, and for being one of my art friends.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you having me on here and letting me kind of share my ongoing speech about Terra Solera and what I'm trying to do.
Absolutely. Everybody's going to know about this soon. I'm going to make sure of it. All right, you guys. Well, thank you for watching. If you have any questions for Ash or you want to learn more from her about world building, leave a comment and I will make sure to get your comments to Ash and I'll try my best to get some answers for you all. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.